All right, guys, we're at end of week 3. What do you guys want to review from this week or last week? So last week was OOP. This week was more algorithm and data structures. Good topics to know about, but not essential in terms of your progression for this cohort. So OOP should definitely be our focus for today's review. But with that, I'll open up to students. What do you guys want to cover for this review?
I have a, oh, sorry.
Go for it, Dajin.
Yeah, I asked the TA about this already, but I just want to do another question about some just key takeaways or just some fundamentals that we should make sure we should know before the assessment.
Yeah. So again, this good question. Always good to be prepared. Our assessment is going to be OOP focused. Hopefully that's no surprise. So make sure you know how to create classes, create instances of those classes, interaction of classes. So again, with as we've kind of mentioned before, school interface is a good challenge to review or reference because we want to create, classes that interact with each other. For example, school interface, we had a school class that had students and staff within them. That was an example of composition where, again, students and staff live within a school, like in the real world. So that's how we kind of modeled it in our application there. We did cover other great OOP topics such as inheritance. Inheritance is not required for this assessment. You can get a bonus if you decide to use it for a certain part of it, but it is not required. But make sure you still understand inheritance, regardless if we are testing on it or not, because it is a fundamental OOP concept. CSV, working with CSV files. So you're going to have to do that with the assessment as well. Reading in data, having your application run with that data, and also writing the data back out to basically save your application state. Again, CSVs aren't the best solution for this. We're going to eventually get to databases, we promise. But CSVs are what we're going with right now. Databases are much more flexible, and I would say easier to work with than CSV files in terms of data storage. Okay, thanks for that question. Marcos?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so just to kind of help explain the question. So an example is with the bank challenge that we had to do. So we had to parse a CSV for, each different class that we had. So rather than rewriting the same method for each class, because they shouldn't really, inherit from each other because they're different. Is it acceptable to write a helper module where you have these different functions, and then you could just, use that function in the class?
Yes, 100%. Marcos, I want to give you a high five there. Great comment there. I would agree with that. So if you, again, we talk about dry code. If you catch yourself kind of writing the same or similar logic more than once, that usually can be redesigned so that you only have one single place to do it. What Marco suggests is actually how I solved the banking challenge, where I realized, yeah, we don't have bank and accounts and owners, they aren't directly related, as in we can't use inheritance to kind of model that relationship. But they do some similar things, such as reading from CSVs. So yeah, I actually created a helper class, just kind of how Marco suggested, that's going to do all the core reading and writing logic. Obviously, each different object, whether it be bank accounts or bank owners, they still have some particular details about themselves. Like you need to read in owner object if you're opening a owner CSV file. But yes, sorry to cut this short. Marcus is absolutely correct. If you decide to create a helper file or function or class, whatever, to do some similar logic, that's totally fine. Important thing, as key takeaway from OOP week, or just in general of coding, whatever design you go with for your application, it should be fine so long as you can justify why that is the appropriate design. So there's multiple ways to design things. There's not always one right way. So whatever design decision you make sure you can back it up. Don't just say, hey, I did it this way because it was easiest, or I did it this way just because I felt like it. Those aren't justifiable reasons. But if you're like, all right, I need to read in 3 CSV files for different data types, I decided to centralize it in this one helper file, that makes sense. So whatever design decisions you make, just make sure you back them up. So if I'm going through your assessments and grading them and I see a weird design, I might ask you about it, like, hey, why did you choose this design? And you might have to kind of justify. If you justify it, great, I'll be like, cool, that makes sense. And if you're like, hey, I had no idea how to do this, I just did this, that's not going to be a good justification. All right, Nathan.
Yeah, echoing back on what Jen stated, if we could go over writing CSVs in an efficient manner rather than just overwriting everything and making a complete new sheet, that would be great.
Yeah, so I will say that is not fully possible with CSV files. It's just, again, that's why we use databases. CSV is just kind of like introduction to data management. Yeah, we'll go over with CSV reading and writing with the bank account challenge that I'm going to do in a second, just to make sure we understand how to use dictionary writer and just get a little more experience with CSV files.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Kat?
Just a quick question. I don't know if it'll be relevant for the assessment, but on the yesterday's challenge, the field names are missing from the CSV. So if we have a situation like that, is it okay for us to just hard code it in there, or would we have to solve it programmatically?
Yeah, great thing. I think, I was working with you and your partner yesterday. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure why the headers were missing from the CSV files. I added them in just manually, so you don't have to solve it programmatically. You can modify the data files in that manner. If you just wanted to get to work with dictionary reader and writer. Yeah, so apologies if that was confusing. Again, you can use the reader and writer module, which are separate from the dictionary, reader and writer objects instead of the dictionary reader and writer if you don't have headers. But I would just say, yeah, add in headers if we forgot it. That's not a big deal. That's not really changing the problem too much. But yeah, thanks for that question, Kat. Roque. Oh, I think you're muted.
I was just wondering about the assessment. So one, because you went over how you want us to kind of justify what we did, should we include some kind of README with a little brief summary of how our code should work rather than putting comment lines in the entire code?
I don't think you're gonna need to README. All of your assessments are gonna have the same general design. But yes, I would say put in comments. If you do something kind of like quote unquote weird or something that's atypical, that's fine. Again, we're not saying there's only one way to do something, but yes, please add helpful comments saying, hey, the reason we're doing it this way, or the reason I'm doing it this way is because X, Y, and Z. So comments are really helpful for other people reading your code. And also, if you come back to your code like a year from now, comments can kind of help get settled. So again, you do get some minor credit for writing comments. I know in assessment one, it was a bonus. In this one, it's not a bonus. But yes, comments will be helpful. Okay.
And then my next question is, my follow-up question is, since each of the challenges regarding the OOPs are kind of different between bowling school and bank solutions, are you able to post the three of them up to the pull request? And then are we able to use the TA hours tonight and maybe Zoom groups this afternoon to kind of review those solutions as a group so that we understand how to apply different principles in different settings and contexts?
Yeah, you guys are free to meet to discuss other challenges. Again, please do not discuss assessment with TAs or other students. We've been clear on that, so hopefully no one's thinking otherwise. But yeah, if you guys want to have a session, like student-led session, say, hey, let's cover budget or bank accounts, whatever. Yeah, we're not going to stop you there, as long as you're talking about the concepts and not about assessment too at all. I was going to post a video. So again, each cohort, we don't always review the same problems. I think I did like a budget review 2 cohorts ago. So I'll post that video in the Slack or the Slack channel in case anyone wants to go over budget. I think that's a good challenge because it's covers some nice open-ended concepts that we went over. But yeah, again, search past cohort videos. Sometimes we cover a challenge that we didn't quite get to for the current cohort. Sorry, just posting the video now. Any other questions before we dive into our bank accounts review? Okay, let's get into bank account then. Sorry, give me 1 second. Posting that video. Okay, I posted that in Quebec in case anyone cares about budget. Let's talk about bank accounts. So again, a lot of students were working on it yesterday. I thought it's a good challenge to kind of give over some concepts. So let me share my screen if I remember how to do that. All right, so there's my screen. Bank accounts. So hopefully you guys attempted this yesterday. Let's kind of just get a good OOP review here. Again, I might kind of expedite this, so I have a solution. I might copy some code from there, but let's kind of start from scratch and cover CSV reading and writing first, and then we'll kind of get to other parts of this. So you're given 3 CSV files. As Kat mentioned, I think headers are missing, and I'm going to add them in just because that makes using dictionary reader and writer easier. But let's start first with creating classes. So I'm going to create a folder. Again, this is just for organizational sake. So let's call it classes or whatever you want to call it. It's not what I wanted. I want a folder called classes. And then in there, I'm going to create a few classes. Let's go with accounts.py. Let's go with owner.py. And then I'm going to go with account owner.py. So basically for every data file that I see, I'm just going to create a corresponding class. Basically we have external data and we're going to have internal data, and that's not supposed to be a folder. Account owner. All right, so I'm just going to create one of these classes from scratch, and I'm going to kind of copy and paste some code just to expedite things, as I said. So let's focus on account. So we look at the accounts CSV. Again, there's no headers here, so it's not fully helpful, but I believe this is meant to be the ID for the account, the balance in the account, and I think date created or updated, one of those. I'll go with date created. All right, so the reason I want headers here is one, I want to know what this data is, just reading the text file, and two, it's going to be very helpful when I decide to read this file in using dictionary reader and writer. All right, so now that I added these headers, I'm going to go to my account class, and let's start creating our account class. So it's going to be pretty basic right now. I'm going to call it accounts. I'm going to create an init method. Again, most of the times we create a class, you want to have an init method. It is not required, especially if you have no data you want to initialize. You don't need to have it, but most of the time for our purposes, we are having it. Just to kind of, make sure I don't make any typos. I'm actually just going to copy my headers I created and paste those as the parameters here. So the naming does matter here for your headers. If you want dictionary reader to work kind of seamlessly, the actual variable names that you put in your init method should match the header names. Now, again, you don't have to match them, but if you want to use dictionary reader, it's just easier that they match. All right, so that's my init method. Let's quickly store some stuff on our instance. So we create instance attributes, usually just match the names, but again, they don't have to match. Self.date created. I'm going to make a default value for date created in case one does not exist. I'll say date time now. Again, this is a module. This is a Python module that's it got auto imported in terms of VS Code, knew what I was looking for, but date time is a module that has a lot of date time functionality, as you might guess. So again, this is a default value, meaning if I'm creating an account, I'd rather just have the current time be the creation date, and I'll specify the ID and balance if I want to. John Price, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, this isn't particularly about the question, more so about, like, I know this is being recorded right now. Is this going to be posted on the Code Platoon channel this weekend?
Yes, it'll be posted probably around lunchtime in week 3. Yeah, so we usually try to upload right after lecture time, but it takes like an hour or two because Zoom has to process something and YouTube has to process video. It takes a while. All right, class method. I'm going to create a read all accounts. Let's say load all accounts. The reason I'm making this a class method, again, hopefully we're kind of clear on some of these concepts, is because I do not need one particular account to exist in order to load all accounts. That's kind of like a generic concept. So that's why I'm creating a class method. And the parameter that it accepts is a reference to the class that called it. Now, again, just to review, I know I've probably said this many times before. This is just a parameter name. You can name it donuts, you can name it whatever, but by convention, we name it CLS. And it's so much of a convention that VS Code actually kind of syntax highlights that being a special word or special keyword. So load all accounts. So we're going to do CSV reading here. We want to read in the data from our CSV file and create objects. Again, this is the whole idea of OOP. We don't want to create just dictionary data. We want to create actual objects and store that within our application. So here, let me create maybe an array to store all my objects. So let's do all accounts will be an empty array to start. Then I want to open my file. So we use our syntax for that with open. We need a file name. So I'm going to put the file name as a class attribute, kind of a design decision. data file equals, we gotta navigate to it. So it's /support. I'm not sure what's called support, but I'm not going to change those names right now. So that's the relative path to our file. Usually we need to have the absolute path. So this is where we need to do some like file OS path manipulation. It's kind of tedious. I wish I could just kind of probably should create a snippet for it, to be honest. We talked about using VS Code snippets, but we're going to try to remember how to do this. So let's go and open that file. So the file base path is going to be os.path.absolute path. Oops, that should be import abs path, and then I think it's os.path.dir name. Surprised I remember all this. And then file. So file is kind of like a special variable that points to the current file. So that's going to be the base path by taking the directory name of that file, and then full, let's just say file name equals os.path.join the file base path and the data path, data file. Okay, so sorry, I know this is kind of tedious. We've done this a bunch of times, but basically we need to find the full path, and then we can open the file and give that a name. It's called CSV file. All right, so this is a syntax for opening a file. We're going to call it CSV file. That's just the variable name. Now let's create a dictionary reader object. So we need to import CSV. That's the module that gives us access to these cool tools. I'm going to create a reader object. So it's CSV dictionary reader. Is, again, this is a class. We're creating an instance of the dictionary reader class. We need to pass in the file name or the file that we opened. So CSV file. All right, great. This creates an instance of the reader object. Maybe add some comments, create instance. Sorry, was there a hand up? I don't know if I missed that.
Just a quick question. Do we have to have the import OS piece?
This stuff right here. If it works without it, then no. Sometimes it works for me. Sometimes the relative path does not work for me. So I'm just going to do this just to be kind of complete. This won't not work, but sometimes just using a data file name will work, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yep. I just want to do this because, again, depending on the method you use, sometimes you need the full path. I'm just going to keep that in there. All right, let's do a for loop for, let's call it data dictionary, to make it clear that we're going to be receiving dictionaries by looping over the reader object. So each row in my data file is going to be converted to a dictionary. This is what dictionary reader automatically does for us. So that's why I opted to use dictionary reader. So each row in my file here, excluding the header row, is going to be converted to a dictionary. So that's why I called this variable data dictionary, to make it clear I'm getting a dictionary back from the reader object. Now we want to create instances. In this case, I'll call it new account. Now let's call it account. Account equals account is our class. I'm going to do ** data dictionary. This is how you convert a dictionary to an object. All right, so that's something hopefully we've seen before, but let's make a comment: convert a dictionary of data into an object in our application. All right, so let's talk about what's going on here. Again, we are creating an instance by using the class name. That's how we create instances. Here, we are taking a dictionary and basically breaking it down into keyword arguments. So quargs is like the funny sounding name, but keyword arguments, this will basically target these parameters in my init method. So ID, balance, and date created. These are keyword arguments that my init method will receive. And the whole magic of that is that my headers, again, match exactly with what the keyword argument should be. And that's why this kind of works kind of seamlessly. Now, one change I can make here is that right now I'm hard coding account here. That's going to work fine, exactly how I want it to. However, since we have a reference to the class, notice I use CLS right here to get to the data file. I could have used account here. Both are going to do the same exact thing in this case, right? Where I use the actual class name here. But since we have a class method, we have a reference to the class, and we should opt to use that unless we have a reason not to. So again, this is still referring to the account class, but it's going to be dynamic, especially if we decide to use inheritance. That's a slightly different topic, but just simply put, let's use the class reference instead of the actual hard-coded name of the class. And this makes it a little more flexible should we need that flexibility. But it's doing the same exact thing. We're creating an account instance from our data dictionary. After this, I'm going to append into all accounts. Andrew, I think you had a question.
Yeah, quick one. Your date created in your initialization method set to now as a default parameter if there's nothing passed in?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that for a different reason. It's not going to be impacted from reading in the data file. It's putting like if I create my own account in my application, I don't want to, always have to put date time now. So I kind of just bake it in there. Amy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I didn't quite catch. How is it that the CBS file, how is that converted to a dictionary?
Yeah, so we open the CSV file. So it's just opening a text file at this point. Then we create a dictionary reader object. This class is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So when we create an instance of that reader object, and we pass in the file that we want to read, this class will go through line by line and basically convert that line into a dictionary. So again, I'm not sure exactly how it does it, but this is the whole idea of abstraction where I don't need to know how it does it. I just need to know what it does. So in this case, dictionary reader just says, all right, this is your line. These are your headers. I can create a dictionary based on ID value is this, ID or key of balance is this, the key of date created is this. And so again, that's kind of automatically done for us. So when we do this for loop right here, we're getting dictionaries for each row that's being read by the reader.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Were there more hands up? Sorry, I tend to miss them. Jesse.
Yeah, back on the same topic. I think that question came up because we were working on the accounts.csv file and the dict reader wasn't working because there were no headers.
Yeah, so apologies if that's something that we lapsed on. Again, I'm not sure why the headers are missing for all these, if that was an oversight or maybe they don't want to use dictionary reader. I don't know the origins of this, but I would just say add in the headers and then it'll work. If you don't have the headers, I'm not sure if dictionary reader and writer can work. It might be possible. I was supposed to look into it, but I still don't know if that's possible.
You can pass in headers as an argument.
Again, that automatically works. So if I passed in, you're saying the field names here, that'd work?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. So if you don't have headers, you can still specify field names and I assume we'll just take it in order. So this list that you provide will kind of map over to these entries. Okay, cool. That's good to know about.
Thank you.
Courtney?
Yeah, going off of what they were saying, the dict reader didn't work for me either. So I used dot reader. And I was just wondering what the difference was.
Yeah, so dot reader and writer, these are other methods, or I guess, I'm not sure if this is a class, but this can let you read any file. It could be a CSV file, it could be just a regular text file. This won't create a dictionary for you. It'll just give you straight up the line that it read. So it'll give you this entire line with the commas in there. And then it's your job to break apart that data line and parse it on each comma and say, okay, I have 3 pieces. So you get like a array back, or sorry, a list back with 3 string items. And then you had to kind of pick them off and pass them into your instance. So you could do it that way too. We could see that if we want to quickly do that. So we use reader here, we pass in the file, and then each line we get, hopefully this is not too much of a tangent, but for row in reader, we'd have to, I think this actually takes in a delimiter, if I'm correct. So delimiter.
I didn't need to pass in anything, but yeah.
Okay, so let's just see what this looks like. I'm curious. All right, so let's take a slight tangent. Let's give this a run by just run our account file. So I'm going to do accounts, load all accounts. And let's see if this method works or if I put it up incorrectly. So We're gonna call this, we want to append eventually, but I just want to print out all my rows using the reader object, not dictionary reader. I just want to see what the data looks like. So let's actually run our file and do Python. Let's get into my folder and then do Python account.py. I don't know if this will work, fingers crossed. All right, cool. So it did read it in. So this is what your reader object does. It reads every single line. In this case, I had a header row, so it read that in. It's going to automatically use a comma delimiter. So notice it breaks down each entry into a list. So now we have access to each piece of data. And now it'd be our job to create instances. So we do account equals or account, and then pass in the values kind of manually. So this isn't too cumbersome, but I do row 0, row 1, and row brackets at index 2. So I'm targeting these values and passing those into my constructor or my initialization method here. This works, but two things about it. One, it's a little more manual, and two, it's a little harder to know what these values are, right? I just see index 0, 1, and 2. That's not very helpful to me. That's just kind of arbitrary that I have 3 values and I don't quite know what they are. So again, I prefer dictionary reader, but yes, if you don't have headers, it looks like, again, you can use the reader object and it'll work. Just keep in mind, they might have to do a little bit more work. But I'm just gonna transition back to dictionary reader if you guys don't mind, just because it's a little easier to work with. And that's what I'm gonna go with. Amy, do you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, Courtney? Okay. All right, so let's kind of keep going with this. So again, we're reading in all accounts. So now I switch back to dictionary reader. I'm populating all accounts. I want to return all accounts after they have been read in. And I'm going to, since I've made this mistake before, create a repro method, which is similar to the str method, but a little more, I think, flexible. So just show what I've created. So let's return f string, let's say self.id. Let's say account. All right, so now when I load all accounts, I should be able to get them back. Now let's just print them out. Okay, so notice I get a nice list here. Maybe not the easiest to read, but these are all accounts that were created. Again, the reason I'm saying this display is because I chose to only print out the account ID, but the balance and date created should all be part of each of those objects. An important thing, we want to create actual objects, not just dictionaries. So that's why we create an object like this. Okay, so let's say we did the reading. I'm gonna take care of the writing right now too, since we're just dealing with CSV files. It's very similar to the reading. So I'm gonna, in fact, it's so similar, I'm just going to copy, paste, and say, save all accounts. Okay, so we have CLS. We need to pass in maybe all accounts with data. Okay, so we have all accounts. We want to write that out to the file. Again, noticing duplicate code, right? I have the same thing for data files. Maybe I'll create another class method and say def gets file path class. Again, always good to centralize your logic. And then we are scoring you guys on writing dry code, so any redundancy is not great. So here I'm just going to return this, and cool. So now that I have this method, I'm going to reuse it here, and that should be fine. Any questions on anything I'm doing, let me know. But again, I just created a central method so I could use that method in 2 different places to do the same work for me. So get file path will give me the full file path that I want. All right, so we want to write to a file. So the default mode for a file is read, I believe. So here I need to specify the mode as W, which will write over everything in our file. I could be more explicit here and say this is a read operation. If you're confused about where this is coming from, I'm going to point you to documentation. They'll tell you about all the modes you can open a file with, but W stands for write. In this case, I want to write over everything in my file. And that's something we want to be mindful of. All right, here, I want to specify the field names. These are your headers that you need to tell dictionary writer. Right, dictionary writer needs to know how to kind of map your data based on field names. So here, I could either hard code them in. So I could say field names are going to be ID, balance, and date created. That's one approach. That isn't the most dynamic approach, and I think I've seen other solutions that I think are better. But this would work where I tell the writer, hey, these are your headers, and you can basically use a dictionary I give you to write out lines. So it's the opposite process. We're going to take objects, convert them to dictionaries, and then dictionary writer will take the dictionaries and write them out to our file. So we have a writer object. Andrew, you have a question?
Yeah, for your save all accounts method, what are you passing through when you pass through all accounts? Are you passing through the class method, or are you passing through the return value of all accounts?
It's kind of yes to both. So I'm deciding, and I'm the designer of this code. I'm not going to store all my accounts within my class. I know I've seen some students create like a class level attribute that keeps track of all the accounts that they load in. That's fine if that makes sense to you. But someone else is going to own this data. So whoever, we're going to load some data and just give you an array. Someone's got to own that array. So we'll see how that kind of works with our design here. But yeah, I'm going to need to pass everything I want to write back to this method. I don't have access to it within this class. So that is what I'm passing in. It's just me an array of all my objects. I'm going to create a dictionary writer object, tell it the field names. And then for each, we don't need we want 4 accounts in all accounts. So we're going to loop over all of our objects that get passed into this method and do the reverse process. We want to convert it to a dictionary, and there's a very, very easy way to convert it to a dictionary. So let's say data dictionary equals accounts. We use a dunder dict property, and this will give you a dictionary of all the instance attributes. So this will, again, create a dictionary for you based on that object. We'll get a data dictionary, and now we want to write out to our file. So I want to write out to file, convert an object in our application. So I was writing comments just to make sure we're we know what we're doing here. Okay, so that's our dictionary. Again, I don't really need this middle stuff. I could just use account dictionary straight up, but I'm just making it more explicit. And now we need to write it out. So I'm going to do writer.write row. And I need to pass a data dictionary. One thing that I forgot is that just because I told it the field names does not mean the field names will be added into the file. You need to explicitly, if you want to, add a header row. And this is a step that you need to do with the writer, write header. So it's going to take these field names and insert that as the first row. That's what this does. You omit that, you can still write out your data, but your text file will not have those headers. Notice that there's no headers here. Maybe that's because they were written without the right header. All right, so those are the steps for writing out. So let's actually mess with this a little bit. And then I know there's some questions, so I'll pause for questions in a second. But I'm going to create my own account here. So we get all of our accounts loaded in. So let's call it accounts. That's what load accounts will return to us. I'm going to create a new account for myself. So I'm going to say new account is going to be an account. The ID will be, I don't know, 6666. The balance will be, let's say I have $12 in my account. I think these are in pennies. Yeah, these are in pennies. So I have $12, 1,200 pennies. And I'm not going to specify a date because that's going to be automatically done for me via this default parameter. So I just need to pass in the ID and balance, and the date created will be automatic for me. And then I want to store that in accounts. So let's do append my new account. Again, I'm just doing this kind of intermediately. We're going to add this logic somewhere else eventually. And now I want to save all accounts. So I'm going to do account, save all accounts. Now this is going to take my accounts list here, and it's going to write that back out to file. So if I do this correctly, I'm actually going to create a backup, and I highly recommend you guys doing this too, because sometimes you accidentally overwrite it with nothing, or you do something wrong, you lose your data. So I'm going to create a backup of my file. So accounts copy will be my backup. But here I'm writing out to my accounts CSV. So let's give this a spin and see if this works. And then I'll pause for questions, of course. So I want to run Python accounts.py. Okay, notice what got spit out in here. So I just ran my application. It basically read all the data in. I added my own account through my application and then wrote all the data out. So all the original data is still preserved. That actually got written back. Keep in mind, we didn't just append. We probably should append in this case, but in this case, we wrote the entire file from scratch, from our data into the file. So my new account got spit out right here. So that's kind of cool. Looks like I have a slightly different format here. I'm not going to worry about whatever this is doing, but cool. So looks like my reading and writing works. I'm going to do one more thing with reading and writing, and then we'll pause for questions, I promise. So let's go back to accounts. So the thing I just mentioned is we are writing out our entire data. That's kind of wasteful for this specific instance where we just added one new account. So what if I, did another method, class method, and I just want to def add new account, or let's say save new account, CLS, new account. It's gonna be very similar to this. So I'm just gonna copy and paste for now. While I'm kind of doing this, were there any questions? I definitely want to make sure we're using our time well. Any questions?
Is the right header, is that a built-in method?
Yep, that is a built-in method for dictionary writer.
And is it getting that from the field names?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So the field names are your headers, and then this actually writes itself from the file to file. Okay, so for this, I'm going to not write, but append to my data, meaning existing data won't be touched. I'm just going to add on to it. And this is more efficient because instead of, again, if we had 1,000 records, we don't want to just dump all the 1,000 records in and out. We just want to add the new account that we're adding. So here, be very similar. We don't want to write a header row that we're going to assume that's going to be in there. Get rid of that. And then we don't need to loop over any accounts. We just need to use a new account. All right, so again, very similar. We don't need to return anything. That's not necessary. Sorry for bouncing all over the place. All right, so now we have this is appending. So adding one row to our data file. This is more efficient than just always writing out. This is something I would encourage you guys to do, but we're not going to be mad if you just decide to rewrite every time you need to modify your file. But in this case, since I'm only adding, I'm not deleting or updating any record, I can just kind of append to the end. There's no sorting, there's no, nothing I need to worry about. So this works. There's some redundant code here. I would say like my dictionary writer could be condensed down, but I'm not going to worry about that. One thing I might want to do is maybe when I have a new account, I could use the dictionary from that and get the keys from there. I've seen other students do this, I think. This is slightly more dynamic. So now I don't have to hard code the field names in the event that I maybe change my name to like account ID instead of ID. I'm not going to have to change it in 12 different places because I've made that a little more flexible. So what I'm doing here is getting the dictionary from my instance and then just getting the keys off of them, right? So since we have a dictionary, the keys are going to be what the header names I want. So this, again, a little more flexible. So I'm just going to leave that in there. I'm going to do something similar down here. But I can't do it this way. So I'll do accounts at 0. And then we probably want to check if length of accounts is empty. We can't really do that. Okay, so again, same thing going on here. Just grab the first account because all the keys are going to be the same regardless of the instance. I just need somewhere to get that. Alternatives could be I could create a class level attribute that has my headers kind of up here. Again, many ways to go about it. But okay, cool. So now that I have an append method, I'm not going to rewrite my entire file. So I could do, instead of save all accounts, I could say save new account. That was my method. New account here. And that should do the same thing that I did before. But now I'm only writing one line to my file, not all 12 or 17 or how many lines there were. So save new account, write think that should be fine. Let's create a new account. Let's say that ID will be 777. Let's say I have $20 to start with, and let's give this a spin. I'm gonna save this, go back to my CSV to see it added. So right now, this is the current data. I'm going to just append the new data to my file. There we go. So we got account 777, $20, and whatever time it is right now, local time. Courtney, you have a question?
Yeah. Can you tell me what you just did on line 59? It's moving very fast, so sorry.
Sorry, no, my apologies for moving kind of fast. Just kind of condensed on time right now. But yeah, absolutely, we'll take time to describe this. So here, I want to just get a list of my headers. So this is basically getting a dictionary and getting the keys from it. So if you want to see what that looks like, we do a print accounts at 0. This is just my first instance that's in my accounts list. I need some instance to get the dictionary from there, from that instance, and then get the keys from it. So if I do, let's do this piecemeal. So I'm going to do the dictionary for this first object, and then also print out the keys, what the keys returns. All right, so let's try to do this. So we got to use the save all accounts method. That should be fine. Save all accounts. We need to pass it all the accounts we need to save. And then let's create another account and see what our output looks like. Say I have $30 now, more primo accounts. All right, so I'm gonna bring out my terminal. Let's see what gets printed out there. All right, so the first line, again, this is the dictionary coming from my instance. So the first item in there is account 1212, has a balance date created. This is what I get back from the dictionary keys. It's basically an array, just like I was kind of hard coding before. But now, again, this is slightly better because if I decide to change the name of my parameters here, like if I rename balance to be like current balance, this will kind of automatically know what the header should be. So it's a little more dynamic that way. Did that clear things up, Courtney, or did I still kind of go too fast?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Okay.
Encore, when I used that same method yesterday, when I was trying to do field names, I had to convert it to a list. So I just wrapped the list method around that, or the list
cool.
function.
Thank you for that note. Maybe I should check my file here. I think it worked for me without it. But again, if it doesn't work, then yeah, you might need to create a list. So
I think you're still using two methods on when you're calling at the bottom where you call your methods. I think you're still using new account and save new account and your expedited method. I don't think you commented out one of them.
Sorry, you lost me there.
At the very bottom of the code. I think you're still calling both methods. You're calling accounts new append. You're calling line 78 and line 80. That's probably why it's still showing.
Well, so this is updating my internal data. So accounts, that's what I'm holding on to. And then the save is what's writing it out. So this append is required because my master data internally, that's what I need to manage. So this is internal data. And then this is write to file. So it's not going to modify my accounts. It's just taking in whatever I tell it to and then going to write that out. Again, I could be wrong, but it seemed like this worked. Not sure if I missed anything there. But yeah, if this doesn't work, you might need to wrap it in a list, but I think it works for me in this case. Okay, so we got a little bit more time left. Let's just kind of talk about other concepts. Before we wrap this up though, any questions on reading or writing to CSV files? Because that is something that I know we wanted more practice on. Want to make sure we kind of understand the process using dictionary reader and writer. Kind of makes it easier, but again, you don't have to use those if you don't want to. Cats.
Hey, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. On that method that's on the screen right now, you're passing in all accounts, but then you're saying if length accounts. Is that supposed to be? Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure that it's not something new. Okay.
Yeah, that is my bad.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I have another question.
Sure.
So I guess the difference between the dict reader and the regular reader, I guess what I'm curious from my understanding of this assignment, when we were creating the account class, we were just supposed to use the ID and the balance. So if that was the case, like would dig reader still work to only grab the first two? Or would that work to just grab the first two, if that makes sense?
Are you saying if we didn't have like a date created in our class here?
Yeah.
It won't work because, oops, there. It won't work because when you're creating the objects, you're gonna be passing in extra arguments. Let's actually try it before I try to pretend it works or doesn't work. Let's just run this code again. So I want to create another account, 9999. So I have $40 now. Let's give this a run. Hopefully I didn't break anything beforehand. So if I clear this, run that. Okay, so it ran. Let's check our data file and make sure we got what we want. Yep, we got our new account. Yeah, it looks like I don't have my date created, but it seemed to work fine. So yes, I guess you could only, it'll work regardless. So here we got rid of our parameter. It read in the data fine. It ignored date created, and then we just lost our date created now. So I'm just gonna return my copy code then. Question. Kat, you have another question?
I just didn't lower my hand.
Okay, cool. All right, any other questions on reading or writing CSV data?
Yeah, one more question. So we just need to be able to read it, write it, and append to it, right? Those are the three things.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, appending, I'm going to say you should do it, but if you decide to just rewrite your entire file every time, I might look the other way and say, all right, that's kind of wasteful, but that's not the core intention of our challenge. The core intention is the OOP design. But again, we need to get the data somehow. Andrew, question.
Yeah, so in your design of the class right now, when you save all accounts, it just returns the list of all accounts saved, but that list of all accounts saved is not saved to any particular instance of an account, right?
My save all accounts, in this case, I'm not returning anything. I had it before, but no return. Yeah, we're just taking in data and writing it out. We don't have anything to return in this from this method.
Okay, so, but you know what I mean by like how like a singular account doesn't have access to the other accounts, right?
Correct.
But it has access to that class method.
Yes. So I know there's other questions. I'm going to start copying and pasting some code. Just going to get it on screen. But Dejin, you have a question?
Yeah. So I think I'm still kind of confused, like how you're saving your CSV file after you are appending it.
How I'm saving. So are you talking about these two steps right here?
I think so.
Yeah, so this is meant to be internal data. So I'm actually going to copy some code and let's kind of just take a look at what this challenge should better look like. We just focus on one class, but we're going to have probably a bank class. So let me throw that onto the screen quickly. So bank class, magic. So let's take a look at what our bank class might look like. This is kind of similar to your school class from the school interface. So this is something I've coded up before. So here, a bank usually is going to have a name. So I have an instance attribute for that. We're going to have accounts. So multiple accounts might exist in this bank, multiple owners, as in customers. I don't like the word owners here, but customers, and then account owners. This is like the third data file that we haven't talked about too much, but each one of these should have a class based on my design. So I know it's not going to be easiest to kind of understand, but I'm just going to throw some code so I could get it to work, maybe. Any questions while I'm doing some copy pasta?
I have a quick question. So when you say internal data, is that just saying that when you append the file, it's then writing the new line internally, but if you exit the application, it wouldn't save it, and that's why you're writing? And when you're writing, are you rewriting the whole file or you're just rewriting the appended row?
The way I've designed it right now, it depends. If I'm adding a new account, that's going to be an append operation because I'm not modifying existing data. I know I just have one row I need to add. But for other instances, like if I need to delete an account or even update account, like if an account balance changes, I'm going to need to rewrite the whole file because CSV files don't let you target something by like ID. Again, databases let you like say, all right, update account, 1212. CSV files are like, hey, I'm just a dumb file. I don't know, how to kind of pick out data in that manner.
Okay, great. So just to recap, so the append method you had on the screen right before, that's enough. Just that one chunk of code. You don't have to call the write after calling the append in order for it to write. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so both of these are writing to the file. One is just adding one row. The W means rewrite the entire file. So in that case, we need to rewrite all the records we have, versus in this case, we only pass the new record that we created internally.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you for your question. Let me get rid of this. So I put a lot of code on here. I know you guys are probably missing all the details, but here I'm basically storing all the data files. This is where I'm storing it. My bank is keeping track of all the accounts, all the owners, and the account owner link here. So I'm not storing that within my account class. I know some of you guys might have a design where you store all accounts here, like create a class level attribute and call it all accounts. Again, that's not wrong. It's just make sure you justify why that makes sense to you. But for me, I rather have my bank keep track of all the accounts that we load in. Courtney, question?
If we wanted to delete one row on the CSV, do we need to know how to do that?
Yes, you should know how to do that in terms of if you need to delete a row, that's the case where you need to just rewrite the whole file. So if you want to see that, I guess I don't know if my code really won't run right now. Let's see if it does.
No, that's helpful. I know we're appending one, so I didn't know if there was a specific deleting one.
Yeah, as I mentioned, appending is more efficient because we know exactly what we need to write. But if you guys choose just to rewrite your file, even for an append operation, that's going to be fine. That's not going to be too much what we're focused on. All right, I'm pretty sure my code won't run, but questions as I try to tinker with this. All right, I'll post my solution. I'll say that much. I'll post my solution. This is kind of just not going to run because I added some things in. But things I want to point out. So, you might have a withdraw method. These are two things you need to do. This can be very similar to your assessment. You want to update your internal data and you want to update your external data, which are your data files. So let's say I want to add a new account, right? Previously, I was kind of just doing that, ad hoc. But now I actually have an add new account method in my bank class. So I tell it what the account is, who the owner is going to be associated with it. And then here I check if the account exists. That's something I might want to do because we want to reuse account IDs. So if the account exists, I just spit out a warning message. But assuming the account doesn't exist, I append into my accounts data. I create a new account owner relationship, append into that. And then I'm going to update both my files here. So these save operations are going to actually write out to my file. So again, we need to update internal data, and we want to update external data as well. So both these things have to be done in case my application crashes. My external data is going to have the correct data in case I need to boot up my application again. And this is going to be very similar for your assessment. You're going to do something along these lines too. So make sure you always update your internal data and your external data. I want to point this out because I've seen mistakes here, and this is kind of something that I might kind of care about more. Don't always just read from your data file to get your records. You should have an internal representation of your data. Meaning, if I want to just list all my, let's say I had a menu option to list all accounts that I have in my application, I should not be reading from the data file each time I want to list them. My application should have a list of accounts that it reads from internally. We don't want to keep reading from the CSV file because that's expensive operation. So again, I've seen that in the past where students were like, all right, I'm not going to store anything internally. I'm just going to read from the CSV file. That can work as in get the correct results, but it's not proper design. We don't want to always read from the file when we could have internal memory to rely on. So that's why we need to update our internal data and our external data kind of in sync here. Dajin, you have a question?
So is that dot save a built-in method?
Nope. This is save accounts. If we take a look at save accounts, I think I called it save new accounts. So this is some of the copy and pasting I did, but this would be save accounts, and this is the writing or the appending we're doing.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Let's go back to our bank. Marcos, question?
Yeah, so just what you were saying, how it shouldn't be rereading from the CSV every time you call a like I guess, an attribute. So like, is that what self-dotted counts is doing on line 8? Is it rereading the CSV every time?
This is just in my init method, that's gonna load it when my application loads. When I create this
Okay,
bank instance,
okay.
but yeah, my managing of data is right here, where I'm going back to self accounts, which I initially load with every account. If I'm adding a new account through my, what my application is doing, I'm going to append into that data so it's stored internally, so I don't have to reread from the file. But I do
Okay.
want to save out to the file because that's something I changed. So again, if my application crashes, my data file will be fine. Okay, we are approaching lunchtime, and I do want to get to assessment 2. So again, I'll post the solution at some point to the bank account challenge. I have my own solution that will kind of make more sense, hopefully, when looked as a whole. But let me stop the recording.